Now for the news in detail. In the U.S., the daily deaths from coronavirus have dropped to 820 as the country's tally nears 90,000. The global COVID-19 death count has crossed 315,000 with over 4.7 million infections. More on that now in this report.
Deaths has seen a downward trend for the last couple of days in the hardest hit regions of the world. While the virus epicenter of the U.S. appears to record lesser deaths, the White House has pinned the blame on the Centers for Disease Control for its delayed response. Meanwhile, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has applauded the work of healthcare providers.
Per capita, we are doing more than other countries, significantly more. Diagnostic tests by population, New York is 7.1. Italy is second, 4.9. Canada, USA, nationally is doing 3.3. We're double the national average. So thank you to the Department of Health team and everybody who's been working so hard to do that.
Italy and Spain are among a number of European countries that are set to further ease their coronavirus restrictions from today. Public transportation and most businesses will be free to reopen after more than 2 months of nationwide lockdown. But in Egypt, the government says it will halt public transport and impose strict restrictions from May 24th for 6 days during the Eid holidays.
Throughout this time, which is approximately a full 6 days, all commercial shops, malls, restaurants, and entertainment venues will be closed, as well as all beaches and public parks, in order to limit the spread of the virus in all ways possible.
South Korea has reported 15 new COVID-19 cases with signs that the cluster centered on Seoul clubbing district is slowing. China has reported 7 new infections, one of them in the northeastern province of Jilin, where a partial lockdown is in place.
Here in Pakistan, the death toll from the new coronavirus has jumped to 903 as the country recorded 30 new deaths in the last day. The health ministry says 1,947 more cases were reported, bringing the tally to 42,125. The health ministry said 11,922 patients of coronavirus have recovered so far. It said Punjab has recorded 15,346 infections, Sindh 16,377, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa 6,061. 2,692 cases have been reported in Balochistan and 997 in the capital territory of Islamabad. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Imran Khan is launching the cash dispersal program for workers who have lost their jobs today. The Prime Minister's office says over 3.4 million jobless applications have so far been received through the Ehsas labor portal. In Afghanistan, 7 people have been killed in a suicide blast near the National Directorate of Security's special unit in Ghazni province. Medics say over 40 others have been wounded in the attack. Confirming the blast, the Interior Ministry said a religious center in Ghazni city was attacked. The spokesperson, Tariq Aryan, said details will be shared soon. Meanwhile, claiming responsibility, Taliban spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid said 56 soldiers have been killed and 42 wounded in the blast. In a tweet, Zabihullah said the suicide bomber targeted the military base and barracks in the city. The Taliban say the recent political deal between President Ashraf Ghani and Abdullah Abdullah is only a repetition of past failures. Yesterday, Ghani and rival Abdullah signed a power-sharing agreement, ending months of political impasse. Spokesperson Sohail Shaheen said all sides should focus on the real and sincere solution. Shaheen said the resolution lies in the implementation of the Doha Accord without creating further hurdles. He said the prisoners' release process should be completed and intra-Afghan negotiations should begin soon. Earlier, U.S. envoy Zalmay Khalilzad said Washington welcomes the new power-sharing deal in Afghanistan. Khalilzad said the outline for this power deal has been in place for 10 weeks. He said both leaders should not repeat mistakes in governance, as now is the time to resolve the conflict. Libya's military says it has destroyed another Russian-made Pantsir air defense system deployed by renegade General Khalifa Haftar. The UN-backed government said this is the third anti-aircraft system destroyed in a span of 3 days. In a statement, the GNA military said the system was targeted in the southern city of Sirte. The military said the Russian-made air defense system has been provided by the United Arab Emirates to Haftar forces. Meanwhile, rebel Haftar forces have rejected the claims of Libyan forces. Libya's military yesterday launched an operation to take the Al-Watiya airbase, located 140 kilometers southeast of Tripoli. The governor of Somalia's Mudug region has been killed along with 3 of his bodyguards in a suicide car bombing claimed by Al-Shabaab. Security official Musa Ahmed says more casualties are feared. In late March, the governor of Puntland was also killed under similar circumstances. Al-Shabaab, an Al-Qaeda affiliate, was driven out of Mogadishu in 2011 and lost most of its strongholds, but still controls vast swathes of the countryside. Its members have carried out numerous attacks in the capital and seek to overthrow the government in Mogadishu. At least 10 people have died after a boat capsized in the South Kivu province of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Officials say the ship was carrying 23 people, including 5 crew members, 13 of whom were rescued by police and local fishermen. Police said most of the victims were youth and children who hired the leisure boat for excursion. The fishermen were not very far when the boat capsized and rescued 10 people. Police said the survivors have been taken to a hospital. Such accidents are common in the country, with boats often overloaded and lacking life vests. Syria says 7 ISIS members escaped from a small prison in the northeastern town of Al-Hol. State media said 4 members have been recaptured and police are searching for the rest. The town is home to a sprawling camp where tens of thousands of ISIS wives, widows, and children live. Kurdish authorities currently operate more than 24 facilities in northeast Syria, holding about 10,000 ISIS fighters. There are some 2,000 foreigners among the detainees whose home countries have refused to repatriate them, including about 800 Europeans. In recent weeks, ISIS extremists have stepped up their attacks in Syria and Iraq as both countries grapple with coronavirus. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has warned China against threats to interfere with the work of U.S. journalists in Hong Kong. In a statement, Pompeo said any decision impinging on Hong Kong's autonomy can affect U.S. assessment of Hong Kong's status. Pompeo said these journalists are members of a free press and their valuable reporting informs Chinese citizens and the world. Earlier, Pompeo said the State Department was delaying a report to Congress assessing Hong Kong's autonomy under China. In recent months, Washington and Beijing have clashed over journalists working in each other's countries. In March, China expelled American journalists a month after the U.S. announced it will treat 5 Chinese state-run media entities as foreign embassies. World health leaders are set to seek an independent review into the international response to the COVID-19 pandemic at a meeting this week. Representatives from 194 World Health Organization member states will meet virtually for the 73rd Annual World Health Assembly. With coronavirus pandemic taking center stage, questions will be raised over how the virus has infected more than 4.7 million and has killed more than 315,000. The European Union will lead the international call, along with the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, for an inquiry. Meanwhile, the WHO said the organization will remain focused on working to lead the overall response and solutions for the pandemic. Each year, countries come together at the Assembly to review the work of the UN's health agency and to set its priorities for the coming year. In the UK, a trial to see whether medical sniffer dogs can detect coronavirus in humans is set to begin. The dogs are already trained to detect odors of certain cancers, malaria, and Parkinson's disease by the charity Medical Detection Dogs. More details in this report.
In a bid to develop a fast, non-invasive means of detecting COVID-19, British researchers are testing dogs' ability to sniff out coronavirus in non-symptomatic patients. The first phase of the trial will be led by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, along with a charity and Durham University. It has been backed with £500,000 of government funding.
In this study, we aim to determine whether people who have COVID-19 have a distinctive body odour and then train dogs to detect it. Now, we're very grateful to the UK government for supporting this very exciting research. So if this is successful and we show the same for COVID-19, this could completely revolutionise the way that we are tackling this disease.
A decade of research by medical detection dogs shows that dogs can sniff out a disease at the equivalent dilution of a teaspoon of sugar in 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
So what we have to do, first of all, is collect samples of odour samples from people with and without COVID-19. So the way we're going to do that is by collecting using face masks, and we're asking people to wear these face masks for a few hours, and then we carefully collect those. And the other thing we're going to do is get people to wear nylon socks. That sounds a bit strange, but we know from our previous experience that this is a really good way of collecting odours from people, and it's such an easy way to do it.
One possibility is that the dogs could be used at points of entry into the country, such as airports, to detect potential carriers of the virus.
I'll be back after this break with plenty more news. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In France, Nantes' famous giant mechanical elephant has reappeared, delighting visitors. The city's theme park has reopened to the public after the lifting of the country's nationwide lockdown. More in this report.
After 2 months under lockdown, France has finally begun returning to normal. Shops have reopened. Many pupils have returned to primary schools. Parks are also open in different parts of the country. The famous Nantes theme park has also opened, and the famous giant mechanical elephant reappeared to the delight of visitors. The mechanical elephant is an artistic, tourism and cultural project, but due to social distancing, no one is yet allowed to climb on board.
Especially for him, because it's been 2 months that he didn't see it, unfortunately. And he found out on the newspaper that it was going to restart. So this was the first thing to do, to go see the elephant.
Standing 12 meters high, as tall as 4-story house and 21 meters long, the elephant's hydraulic mechanism is controlled by a human operator. Families throng to the spectacle, eager to enjoy their city after spending 2 months cooped up at home.
We wanted to bring out the elephant because it's a flagship attraction of Nantes. It is walking around with no people on it because sanitary measures call for it.
Entry to the theme park is free, but observing measures to control the spread of COVID-19, rides and exhibition galleries remain closed.
The U.S. Air Force has successfully launched its Atlas V rocket carrying an X-37B spaceplane for a secretive mission. The rocket was launched from Cape Canaveral a day after bad weather halted plans for a Saturday launch. The aircraft, also known as the Orbital Test Vehicle, will deploy a satellite into orbit and also test power beaming technology. This is the plane's 6th mission in space. X-37B is a classified program, and very little is known about it, but the Pentagon said it will test the effects of radiation on seeds and other materials. The launch was dedicated to frontline workers and those affected by the coronavirus pandemic. Japan has fallen into recession as the financial toll of the coronavirus continues to escalate. The country's economy shrank 3.5% in the first quarter of 2020, its biggest slump since 2015. The figure followed a 7.3% contraction during the October to December period, confirming a second consecutive quarter of decline. Japan introduced a state of emergency in April, severely affecting supply chains and businesses in the trade-reliant nation. Economists forecast that the economy will shrink 22% during April to June, which will mark its biggest decline on record. Japan announced a record over $1 trillion stimulus package to cushion its economy against the economic fallout of COVID-19. Lebanon says it will start reopening its economy from today following a 4-day shutdown after a spike in COVID-19 cases. In a televised address, Prime Minister Hassan Diab said the country is already in the throes of a deep economic crisis. He warned citizens to strictly adhere to health guidelines, which had been flouted during the initial attempt. Diab said they do not want this stage to turn into a nightmare and will not tolerate any irresponsible behavior. A 5-stage plan for resuming economic activity was unveiled last month. Despite resuming economic activity, Lebanon has not set a date for reopening its airport for commercial flights. Asian stock markets are trading higher, with investors treading cautiously as regional countries reopen their economies. The Nikkei 225 is trading over 0.5% higher. The Shanghai Composite and Seoul's Kospi are also trading over 0.5% higher. Hong Kong's Hang Seng has gained a fraction. Meanwhile, the international benchmark Brent crude oil price has gained about 4.5%. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. For the latest updates on these and other stories, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.News. Thanks for watching.